have you. And the one doctor that it sounded like it's the only doctor I heard them reference they had listed for North America was my stepfather, my second stepfather, Dr. Charles Michael McIntyre. And he is somebody, he very rarely attended church services, and yet he was granted the status of elder, which is higher than the status of a priest in what was then called the RLDS. It was for like Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Mm-hmm. And they have a new name now. I've been meaning to check what it is, but basically a lot of these LDS churches, apparently these, at least the spinoffs like FLDS, Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints churches, they've been used for programs like these, very similar to Scientology. Apparently L. Ron Hubbard was basically given false records with which to impress followers, as if he had some kind of impressive military background history, which he doesn't have. This impressive military history, they just made it up for him. The U.S. Navy specifically, they gave him these like false records to boost his his background story and to impress people. So I'm like, okay, I started noticing these patterns, and even the connection with Guyana. My mother's grandfather was Minister of Health and Housing during arrangements for Jonestown in Guyana. And I'm like, why are they, giving people these like elevated positions to manipulate, a bunch of followers? And they seem to be a lot of sexual abuse and, shadow operations, people being trained, shadow operatives, shadow government operatives, and mind control experimentations, including with drugging the people, and other tactics for brainwashing and programming, the abuse being one of those tactics, all different types of abuse, yelling at them, to terrorize them, and not let them be able to think straight for themselves, independently and stuff. All the control stuff, it's about, having coercive control over people, but in like a plausibly deniable way. So they might be able to go on an errand to the store and come back, and people in the community see them like they're not in shackles. They don't think they're being held like a prisoner, but they could well be if they're in this kind of, occult brainwashing and programming, coercive control system.
And I don't think people really realize how prevalent it is in our society at every level of society. Even in the the elite level, if you will, there's often, people that are in place to, micromanage, handlers, if you will. And I think, like recently, there's been people that have come out and spoken about it publicly. I think a lot more people are coming forward because of people like yourself. But, what would you say, Sahar, to other young ladies? Because I feel like, as we're going with the shutdown, the targeting and the gang stalking and the targeting online on social media, it's so heavy that the gaslighting from mainstream media and just society in general and online, it's so harmful. What would you say to young ladies as advice to that might be listening in, as advice to sort of steer clear? How have you been able to protect yourself, and what would you recommend?
There are some things I've been able to do, but I can't really recommend them. I'm happy to share what they are because they're kind of better than nothing. but I really want to get, it's like, for example, the communications thing is a huge one. And I was actually a communication studies major at, arguably the, number one communication studies program at NYU. They're always been ranked, if not number one, neck and neck, between number one and number two for communication studies. And I have been trying to figure out how to make these darn people not be hacked into my communications for really, that's been a primary focus for at least 5 years, and I've not succeeded yet. So that's the reason that I try to, I do have multiple phones, helps throw them off a little bit, I think, sometimes, because it takes them at least a little time to figure out, she's not on this phone that we're all, eavesdropping on right now, she's not just switched to this other phone. So there's, a very important call, maybe if you turn, on a backup phone and make that call right away. I wouldn't, be hanging out on the phone talking to a friend first, And then I I try to leave things. Actually, somebody who's an aerospace engineer, which a lot of these people are like in this seem to have overlap with aerospace engineering, stuff like that, because that's where a lot of the Nazi scientists that were brought over to the States that are disproportionately involved in these kinds of mind control research and stuff like that. A lot of them got placed like NASA and stuff like that. So aerospace engineering, and I think that's a reason. Representative Jim Guest retired from Missouri. He was trying to help people being targeted like this. He understood a lot about it, including the science. Very nice man, but unfortunately retired now. He served the full terms. He was an aerospace engineer before he went into politics. I think that's a reason he understood so much what was going on. He probably knew more than he could say. And but yeah, I had an aerospace engineer on when I was traveling. I get people just like. They obviously meant to come and tell me information, and so I've come to accept that. So those ones I actually don't try to keep them away from me, but you always have to be on guard, because if they get that close to you, they could have just as easily come to hurt you. But a lot of times people come up to me, like I had somebody pretend to be homeless that was obviously not homeless. I'm like, okay, this guy's lying. He's pretending to be homeless. Why do you pretend to be homeless? He showed me how to compartmentalize my computer to help sequester and protect files, in a way that they'd be least likely to be able to hack into and stuff like that. I was like, wow. And but one of the aerospace engineer people that made a point to come my way when I was traveling between places years ago told me to use airplane mode. So that something seems to help some, but I've noticed that they still hack into my communications a lot, even though I'm in airplane mode, at least when they're within a certain physical proximity, which I actually think is a lot of the reason for what we see as that organized stalking, and you see the people like always hanging out on the street right below your window and stuff like that. Well, part of it's so that they can like harass you with neurologically disruptive sound and stuff like that, and that's the specialty of the father of the serial rapist that was assigned to me at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, assigned to me and the other scholars targeted there. But also, apparently they need a certain physical proximity to hijack your communications and tap into them, and probably play the games like when you're trying to contact Airbnb, and then you get these interesting messages and stuff, and this interesting sudden limitations of choices, because it's like them coming in between you and Airbnb, making sure to shepherd you to one of their own people. So yeah, airplane mode, more than one phone, don't have the phone just open and active when you're not needing it. In fact, you might not even want to have it on when you're not needing it. But for safety, I usually try to keep one phone like almost on, so like on, but in airplane mode, because it's a little quicker to get it going to make a phone call for an emergency if need be, than if I also had to power it up. And I have tried a flip phone. It's a flip phone I'm talking with you on now, but they have managed to hijack that largely too. My voicemail is not anything that I can trust, because it's directing me to have to call a number if I want to retrieve voicemail that I looked up online, and other people have complained about it. It's a fraudulent phone number. And I tried walking into an AT&T store, the AT&T service. I walked into the AT&T store, and they came up against all sorts of walls and everything, too, trying to help me with this. They basically just gave up.
Yeah, I noticed I cannot work with AT&T at all.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, their customer service is really bad.
Well, I'm more worried about it's really, it was just one occasion, but now I remember at least one other occasion too, and they were actually nice to me at the times I reached out to them, but they're so compartmentalized, they're not telling you anything to fix this problem when these people, and to be fair, I've heard that, from what I know from my own experience, and I remember years ago, it had come out that Mossad operatives were doing this. They were targeting females for human trafficking this way. And I've been trying to find the article since. I'm having trouble finding it, but I'm sure it's not only in that part of the world and that agency. And so people abusing these positions to be hijacking people's communications and stuff, they are at the highest level of knowledge and, other resources, equipment and everything to do that, as opposed to a customer service representative or something in the phone store.
Yeah, and it's crazy because now that we have the digital era and the internet and everything and Facebook and social media, it just seems like the FCC is very quiet. almost non-existent in some of as a regulatory agency anymore. A lot of these companies like Facebook and AT&T, Verizon, they're within the jurisdiction of the FCC, even though they're global entities. But the FCC seems very quiet, especially with given the free speech. It's almost like overnight free speech has disappeared, and not hardly a word from the FCC with all of this going on. I find that really unsettling, to say the least.
Well, I'm hoping that we'll get some, really good, caring people in there, because what I was told is that they would also be the place to be able to find out and do some follow-up about people like sending, using certain communications spectrums to send neurologically disruptive sound frequencies to somebody too. So apparently that would be something the FCC could deal with. They're supposed to be able to deal with to some extent, but you'd have to find somebody not pocketed and knowledgeable and caring enough to really do the work and help.
Well, we're almost finished with the hour.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you wanted to include?
Yeah, I think I want to play one file. I just try to do. I can save the other ones for part 5. I think I want to go over. Oh, sorry, I think I pressed the wrong one. Oh, here. I think this one might be the easiest to hear. This is from 5 minutes and 5 seconds in. The transcription is there in the video description with this. Let's see, it's called Dr. L admits feeling coerced by third party to press false allegations. And so I asked her, I mentioned, I'll recap real quick for people. This is what I talked about last part, to part 3, that there was very short-lived. It literally was not more than about 2 weeks altogether. But there was a time that there was like an emergency, like a multi-county emergency basis would have to be how they did it to circumvent all the normal rights I'm supposed to have and everything of due process. And that the person believes me, my mother, suddenly was like, I was told she's my guardian. She'd gotten guardianship over me. And there was just no legitimate basis for this. And I had a lawyer actually talk with the judge who had done this, and I found out literally was not somebody who had even went to law school, but it was literally just went to a school that they call a judge school to learn how to be a probate judge for this stuff. And I thought it was a joke, but I found out they're actually serious, that they do that there in Guntersville and Albertville, Alabama. So anyway. And but then the lawyer spoke with him and asked him, none of this was proper. She didn't even get proper notice, and there wasn't any legitimate grounds, whatever. You need to undo this. He's like, oh, well, I'm willing to, but I don't know how. I don't think there's a way how. And then I'm like, what? And so then I was talking to people, including a law librarian, because they're very knowledgeable about law stuff, or to help track it down if they don't know it off the top of their head. I mean, they're major sources of information, and they're like, yeah, that's true. And I found out that there's if they get something against some kind of criminal record, then you at least have some chance you could get that undone. But if they get a record we decided that she's not competent to be her own guardian, her mother needs to take guardianship over her, then you can't get rid of that as things stand. But I mean, with all I've been through and everything, I don't intend to just accept that. So I mean, whether I need the governor's office to help or the White House to help or something, one day I plan to get that undone. But so I asked her, did they say who they are who were threatening to press charges if you didn't file for guardianship? And she said, did you hear what I told you? Remember what I told you? If I find out who it is, that means there's a court document. Those court documents I have to go through, and we can go through that, but that's in criminal court in Madison County. I said, oh, so you think there is something in criminal court in Madison County? She said, it will be if we want to know what it is. So I'm going to play that real quick. And ultimately what happened is when they found out, I contacted a former law professor who's top criminal defense attorney, Professor Ogletree from Harvard Law School, and he was going to help me. All of a sudden, they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's dropped. We dropped